Hi, good morning, or afternoon, or evening, or night, whatever it is for you. Um, I wanted to make this video just to give an update of my little notebook. Um, and I realized that I only get like 5 views per video. That's fine. I don't necessarily want views, but well, I think what I'm doing is like useful in a certain way and useful to me. Um, And if it's useful to other people, I mean, that would be great because there are tons of great things that I read and learn and things that I mean, personally, I think that like just reading a couple books and giving your ideas, like what I do, is more useful than like 99.99% of what's on the internet. So, yeah. But, that's not necessarily content that people look for. And I've been thinking about this lately, like, well, to be intellectually driven, um, it's a very slow life strategy. And if you're into like life history theory, well, not everyone necessarily can live a very slow life, read lots of books, and it may or may not like actually come out to be useful. It may or may not, you know, um, do anything for you. But that type of culture, that type of habit or mindset or whatever you would call it, of just reading lots of books and trying to learn and be smart is well, it's how I was raised. But I understand that people just don't have the time or energy or culture or mentality to value something like that. But anyway, so yeah, I just wanted to kind of give an update of how my notebook is coming along. So this is my notebook, um, and honestly, it's like silly. It's really silly that it would take something like reading a book that tells you to keep a notebook, because it's just obvious that there's so many things in life that we hear, we see that like it'd be useful to remember that, but we don't remember that. And especially if you read lots of books, or if you're like me and you listen to a lot of like science podcasts with authors or doctors or just whoever has like interesting, useful ideas to learn from, and to just like write those down so that you have them. And to be honest with you, it's not even a case of writing them down for reference. If you write them down for reference, then yeah, they're there. You can, in a year's time, you can find that page on your notebook and read what you wrote. But it's not even that, honestly. It's more like keeping a notebook, like the physical act of writing something down, helps you to learn, helps you to remember. Because in some sense, your mind is like, it's like summarizing whatever it is you just heard or read or whatever. And B, it's like formally telling yourself, like, this is something that I should remember. And so by writing it down, it's like doing that. It's helping you to remember it and to summarize it. Anyway, so yeah, so I started this book. This is my first page, 2025. What is that? August 22nd, and I'm I'm just about done with it. I let's see, where am I at here? So I don't know what this is. This is out of a 180 sheets. What is this, like? I don't know, 20 pages. I have 20 pages left. So yeah. And to be honest, that first month that I had the notebook, I filled out like half of it, and I thought, oh my god, this notebook is only going to last me like a month and a half tops. But then I kind of got bored. I didn't read as much. And honestly, yeah, I mean, we just go through these phases of, being more or less productive, having different priorities or things in our mind. Yeah, and I've already bought my second notebook, and I'm reading. The thing is I read lots of books. There are some books that I come back to over and over again, like Supernormal Stimuli by Deirdre Barrett, The Power of Bad by Roy Baumeister, Breaking Hearts by Roy Baumeister and Sarah Wattman, there are books that are like so useful. Oh, Passions Within Reason by Robert Frank, like one of my favorite books ever. Yeah, there are books that we just come back to over and over again because they're just so useful. They're just so insightful. And there are other books that like we pick up, we read like a couple chapters, and then it's like, well, I'm not sure if I'm actually spending my time efficiently by reading this book. So there are a lot of books like that. Recently, I went through a phase where I didn't read for like a month, and then let's see, how did I even find out about this author? I forget really. I was just reading random books on like evolution. I was listening to podcasts about like evolutionary psychology and like human nature, cultural anthropology, just like all these related concepts. And the name Satoshi Kanazawa came up, and he's an economist. He's an evolutionary psychologist. He's a Japanese evolutionary psychologist who studied at the London School of Economics. This is like all three things that I love: Japanese, economics, and evolutionary psychology. And he got in trouble for a couple ideas that people perceived to be offensive about like ethnicities or races, but his books are amazing. I bought one book, I ordered it at a local bookstore. It came like a week later. I read the whole book in like 2 days, which to be honest is not that much of a big deal. I mean, if you the pace that I read books is about 1 page every 2 minutes. So what that means is if you read 3 hours, that's 180 minutes. You could read roughly 90 pages. So 2 days of reading 3 hours a day. It's not even like a lot. It's most of us, if you work 8 hours, you sleep 8 hours, you still have like 8 hours left of the day. I don't know what you spent that time doing. I mean, watching videos or goofing off, playing games, whatever it is. But I mean, you have more than 3 hours a day of free time. It's not that big of a deal to spend 3 hours a day reading. But you have to kind of like organize your energy and your time to do that. But anyway, yeah, so just 2 days of reading 3 hours per day, and I finished the book in 2 days, and it was like the most interesting book that I've read in a long time. It's called The Intelligence Paradox. And I wrote a bunch of notes about it, but yeah, that was a very interesting book. I would recommend that to anyone. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of like go over some like really interesting ideas that I've been reading, and a lot of people would not necessarily run into any of these ideas because they're just not reading books or watching podcasts with like these types of authors. So I wanted to start with well, honestly, I wanted to make a whole video about this this concept of like what, like from a male perspective, what are men doing as regards like competing with other men and like doing whatever it is that like attracts women, and vice versa from a woman's perspective. What are women doing to compete with other women? What are they doing to compete with other men? Like, what are men attracted to? What are women attracted to? Like, just this huge interrelated concept, crosses like sexual economics, behavioral psychology, social psychology, evolutionary psychology, culture anthropology, like all these related concepts come into play here. But yeah, so one of the first books I read in this, when I was keeping track of this notebook, was The Social Dimension of Sex by Roy Baumeister and Diane Tice. That's the beginning of my note for that. When was this? This was September 4th. I was reading Redirect by Timothy Wilson. I was rereading Mother Nature. I was starting Father Time by Sarah Blafer Hardy. And then I picked up, I've already read it before, The Social Dimension of Sex by Roy Baumeister. It's such an interesting book. It just goes over all these like frameworks for trying to understand sexuality, like attraction, relationships, all these things that are just like, obviously this is interesting to everyone. I mean, yeah, so that one of the most interesting chapters of the book was the one that was about ethnic group dynamics. And well, to be honest, like one of the most interesting concepts, it's something that you might read in other books. It's not the most politically correct topic, but I mean, you have to confront things in life, like to understand them, to try to help whoever you can help in life. You have to understand these things first before you can help anyone or make things better. So basically, the chapter about like ethnic differences, ethnic dynamics, or group dynamics. First of all, so if you read like Nina Jablonski, the books about like skin color, the science of like skin color, this concept comes up that, well, I mean, you'd have to even go back further than that. Like, what are men and women naturally attracted to? I read a really interesting book, maybe summer of last year. It was called Birds, Sex, and Beauty by Matt Ridley. That was a really interesting book about birds, but I mean, half of the evolutionary concepts applied to humans. And if you listen to the podcast where he talks about the book, I mean, he basically says, like, yeah, just apply any of these concepts to humans and like they apply. But no, so basically, how should I even like start this topic? I'll even go back farther than that and say, so right now I'm reading Genome by Matt Ridley. I've just read 3.5 chapters, and I'm also reading The Ancestor's Tale by Richard Dawkins and Yan Wang. Before I started my notebook last year, I read She Has Her Mother's Laugh by Carl Zimmer, and all three of these books kind of touch on this topic of like, well, and you'd even read it in like, Is There Anything Good About Men by Roy Baumeister. Oh, okay, so there's this concept that, I mean, it's so basic, it's like basic biology, but people deny it, so it's weird. It's weird that people just deny science like basic biology, but, so females have bigger gametes. That's how they define a female. It's the half of the species that has bigger gametes. That means that it's more expensive to raise children, to have children. And humans, especially mammals, human females, they have internal gestation, so they carry the baby for 9 months. And so basically, like, this is basic evolutionary psychology. Like, everyone who's read any book about evolution like knows this, but a lot of people just deny science. They deny evolution, so it's kind of like you have to repeat it every time. But so because females have such higher investment in creating offspring, there's a lot of specialization going on. Women breastfeed for the first. I mean, if you look at different cultures, indigenous cultures, it ranges from 1 year to 3 years at the most, but women breastfeed for a couple of years. They have internal gestation for 9 months. They have a limited number of eggs that run out at like mid-40s at the most. Even then, you have like all kinds of genetic problems that come up, so it's not realistic to think that a woman can like healthily have a baby in her mid-40s. I mean, you can, but it's like the numbers go up quite a bit to have problems. But long story short, like, sex is super costly to females because of those like 9 months of gestation, the limited number of eggs, like 2 years of breastfeeding, and then because of like specialization, women are kind of like, there's just a stronger nature to them to like stay around and raise the kids for years until the kids are more or less independent, and males like less so. I mean, of course, it depends on the culture, but like males less so, whatever it is. Males are less so than that. And so what that sums up to is that females, because sex is so costly, like creating offspring is so costly that females are choosier, much choosier than men. And so, well, what I was getting to is that, I'll just say it. So there's this, hold on, let me have coffee. Let me frame it this way. The smartest people in the world are almost all men. The most successful chess players in the world are almost all men. The most successful CEOs, the inventors of modern science, modern technologies, are almost all men. That's called the contemporary explanation is that it's called higher male variability. How do I frame this? So anyway, yeah, I mean, if you go back 150 years, it was just people just believed maybe men are just smarter than women. Obviously, that's false. And then you go back 50 years, even today. But you go back 50 years, and it's just, well, there's patriarchy. It's just men are keeping women down. Men don't allow women to read books and become smart, and that's why men are overrepresented at the top of intellectual and life success and all that. And today, well, if you're educated, if you read books on science and evolution and economics and all these things that I do, and maybe some people do, but not a lot. But if you do read these types of things, then you just know that it's higher male variability. What that means for people who aren't statistically competent. So I'll put it this way. So there's a mean. So this is average IQ. Half of all people are above average. Half of all people are below average. However that works for your perspective. So yeah, 150 years ago, people just thought men are smarter than women, which is not true. The means are pretty much the same. It's not the case that men are on average smarter than women. The means are pretty much the same, but what there is there's higher variability. So if you might not understand what a bell curve is, but basically, think of it this way. If this is the average, there are only so many people that are this much smarter, that are one standard deviation, whatever you want to call it. There are only so many people that are this much smarter, and then there's significantly less people who are that much smarter, and then there are even significantly less people who are that much smarter. And we're talking in IQ, it's a standard deviation of 50, and then the mean is 100. So if you know your basic normal distribution curve, then you know that 68% is contained within one standard deviation. 95% is it 95? No, something like 95% is contained within 2 standard deviations of the mean, and what is it? 97.5 or something? I'm forgetting, but it's something 98% are contained within 3 standard deviations of the mean. So basically, to be 3 standard deviations from the mean in intelligence, that'd be 145 and over. It's something like 1% of the population. So higher male variability means that you can debate the science of this. It might not be the case that this is reality, but the science so far seems to suggest that it is. And there's a mechanism for it, and I'm getting to that. Which is why I brought up Genome, the Ancestor's Tale, and she has her mother's laugh, because there is a real mechanism why this would happen this way. And the evolutionary, that's the, they call it proximate cause. There's a proximate cause and ultimate cause. The ultimate cause is that females are picky, and so males need to assort themselves in such a way that the best ones get picked. But the proximate cause is Y chromosome, double X chromosome. But anyway, so what higher male variability means is that the bell curve, so if 68% of women fit within here, actually 68% of men fit further out. So what that means, for people who, it's kind of hard to, if you don't know statistics, it's really, you just would not really be able to conceptualize it. But the fact is that, like, there are more male geniuses, but there are also male very low IQ, like mentally disabled people. So females are more average. They're closer to the mean on average. I mean, there's variation. That's what variation means. Females are closer to the average, and males are a little bit farther from the average. So at any given random person is going to be average on average, like that's base rate. But if you look at like farther out from the bell curve, like multiple standard deviations, like I'm just making up numbers, but let's say that 1% of males have an IQ of 145 or over, and maybe it's something like 0.5% of females have an IQ of 145 or over. And it's also the other side. 1% of males have an IQ of like 55 or lower, but only like 0.5% of females have an IQ of 55 or lower. So there's higher male variability. Males assort themselves further out from the mean on either direction, bad or good. Females are less so. Females are closer to the average. There's higher male variability. So yeah, basically, the interpretation has changed throughout the times, and clearly there has been like discrimination against females, but that's the contemporary, most up-to-date explanation of why males are overrepresented at the highest what's the word for how well you do in life? Anyway, males are overrepresented at the extreme tails of high IQ. And I guess I'll finish this before I go back to the part about ethnicity and the social dimension of sex. So males have higher variability. So they just have different outcomes in life than females. Males are kind of like gambling in life. Like, will I make it to be really smart, or will I make it to be really dumb? Will I just be average? Females are less so like gambling at life. They're and there's like evolutionary reasons for this. Is that females, they I don't know what the numbers are, but something like 90% of females have offspring. So it's kind of like reliable to be a female. And like in evolutionary terms, it's reliable to be a female. But you can't really win that much. Like, you can't be Genghis Khan and have like 1 million offspring. And males are gambling. I don't know what the numbers are, but let's say like 1/3. 2/3 of men have offspring, and something like 1/3 of males do not have offspring. And a very large proportion of males kill themselves off before like their mid-20s, or put themselves in the prison system because they live a very dangerous life. And that's part of like male variability, and like just this risk-taking that males have to do because their lives are a gamble. Males' lives are gambles. That's pretty much what I'm saying. Males are gambling their lives because that's just how evolution designed males to be. Males like assort themselves, and females are kind of like more reliable. So the mechanism for that, I'll just finish this before I get back to like the ethnicity part. But the mechanism for this is that, there could be very many mechanisms, but the one that's like most salient to me, because I just read this in a few books, is that males have a Y chromosome and an X chromosome, and females have 2 X chromosomes. So what that means is that that's like just biological, like that's how males and females are like determined by, but like as soon as like the sperm meets the egg, is that whether it passes an X chromosome or a Y chromosome to that determines if it's male or female. YX is male, XX is female. So how this mechanism works is anything that's on the X chromosome creates higher variability in males. Now, I'm not like a genetic specialist, but I just read this in a few books, and I just kind of like summarize it in my head like this, and could be wrong, but this is how I understand it from what I've read. Anything on the X chromosome has higher variability in males, and the reason why is because males only have one X chromosome. So let's say you have a high IQ gene. Let's just imagine for the moment that there's a high IQ gene. If males have that, then like it's fully expressed. There's a high IQ gene in males. If a female carries the same high IQ gene on an X chromosome, well, the female has another X chromosome, and it's just statistically it's average. So in males there's one X chromosome that has a high IQ gene. In females there's one X chromosome with a high IQ gene, but there's another X chromosome with an average IQ gene. And so the females are kind of like middled out by the two different genes, like in common speech genes. And the males are not. The males have the one high IQ gene. So that it's kind of like the interaction between having the high IQ and the average gene kind of like middle out for the females, and the high IQ gene fully expressed in the males. But this works in reverse too. Let's say you have an extremely low IQ gene. It's the same thing. If males have an extremely low IQ gene, then it's fully expressed. In females, it's middled out. And there are genes where this is like obvious. What was the one? It was covered in the Ancestor's Tale. It was about some hemophilia or something. There's a genetic disease that it was carried by like British royalty or something. It was only expressed in males because it's on the X chromosome. Yeah, so like this is just how like some genes work. If it's on the X chromosome, it's fully expressed in males, and in females, it's like middled out. It's averaged out. So this is like one mechanism. I don't know other mechanisms, but this is one mechanism how males have higher variability than females. So that's pretty much it. I don't know how much further detail I want to go, but that's pretty much the quick and dry of it. Is males have higher variability because they have one X chromosome. Females have two X chromosomes. So any gene is averaged out on the females, and it's not for males. It's fully expressed for males. Whether that's a gene for height, IQ, some genetic disease, it's fully expressed in males. Males have higher variability, and in females it's like averaged out a bit. Let's see, it's been 27 minutes. Anyway, so this is me coming back to what I was going to say about the social dimension of sex. So the chapter about ethnic intergroup dynamics. So what are males and females attracted to? What kind of dynamics do they go on between matings? Whatever. Long story short. And you'll read that this is why I brought up Nina Jablonski. You'll read this, that males generally in any ethnic group, indigenous ethnic group, whether you're in equatorial Africa where people are as dark as you can be, or whether you're in Sweden or North Russia where people are as fair as you can humanly be, whatever gradient you exist, your ancestors come from on that spectrum. Males tend to prefer females who are a little bit lighter skinned on average. And that's like, you could read this in Nina Jablonski, or you could read this in the social dimension of sex, but that's like, for whatever reason, there are mechanisms, there are potential ultimate causes. Maybe, females need higher vitamin D for their babies or something, but whatever the mechanism is, males generally prefer females who are fairer skinned on average. So, if there's a gradient of skin tone, like if you're in Germany where the skin tone is 1 out of 10, everyone's a 1. Females who are like 0.5 are considered a little more attractive. And if you're in like equatorial Africa where everyone's like a 9 out of 10 in like skin tone, females who are an 8 out of 10 are considered a little more attractive. That's like basically. So in the chapter on like ethnic dynamics in the social dimension of sex, it went into this concept of like, well, did you know? Well, I mean, the book was written in the 90s. I don't know how much has changed, but the statistics are. Let me find it in my notebook because I don't want to necessarily give incorrect information. I mean, the book could have incorrect information. I don't really know, but here it is. Marriage gradient, sexual variety differences, features of beauty, culturally dominant group dynamics, outgroup homogeneity, all these different concepts that were in that great book, The Social Dimension of Sex. Let's see, this is September 27th. Oh no, September 28th. Here it is. This is my notebook. This is my note for September 28th, The Social Dimension of Sex. And not that you necessarily care, but the notes go on for quite a bit about this chapter because it's such an interesting chapter with so many interesting ideas. So let's see. So the actual statistic is that... oh, maybe I didn't write it down. Maybe I just thought it was... Oh no, it is here. So basically it starts out by saying, look, 90% of people marry within their own race. If we were completely indifferent, if we, and you can frame this in terms of like power dynamics, if we were an equal opportunity society, then we would, like, if African Americans are 13% of the population, then like 13% of the time I would be marrying an African American. If Latinas and Latinos are 25% of the population, and I was completely indifferent, I was completely equal opportunity, then 25% of the time I'd be marrying and mating with Latina. But no, in fact, like, and this is kind of like, they frame it in terms of African American and white, but 90% of people marry within their own race, which is not what you'd predict. If people are indifferent, people tend to have a bias, but it's, is it a power bias? Is it just that's who you're around? Is it some type of like Prägung, Lorenz, like imprinting effect that we just are attracted to the people that we grew up around on average? But the statistic is African American women only marry out of their race 2% of the time. That's an extremely low number. Like, that's way less than you'd predict. Considering that African American men are 13% of the population, you'd expect that you'd marry out of your race. Like, if they were indifferent, they'd marry out of the race 87% of the time. So from 87% to 2%, that's a huge difference. And so the book, the chapter tries to go into like what are the effects that would cause this? It's a sciencey book. It's not trying to say that like there are these intense power dynamics, or there are these intense, like, I don't know, like, it's the book is trying to like explain it like to the best knowledge that the book can. So yeah, so one of the concepts is like, so in any group, women who are a little bit fairer on average are considered more attractive, so maybe that's part of it, but that can't explain like all of it. Maybe I'll just like read some of these notes, but yeah, so like one of the main ones is like there's segregated social networks. So people grow up around who they grew up around, and that's who they find attractive, that's who they meet, that's who they spend time with. And so if it's the case that there's like a lot of just people assort with their own people, then that would be one effect. But so there's a bit about cultural preservation, like especially for Jewish people. Jewish people have been isolating themselves culturally and genetically, like in some sense, like endogamously, for hundreds, maybe thousands of years. And so they've preserved their culture. So maybe that's kind of what's going on, is like people want to preserve their own people's culture. They don't want to like intermarry because somehow they feel like their culture would be threatened. That could be one effect. That could be one cause. So there's this thing about group size dynamics, like minority dynamics. And so basically it says anytime there's a large group and a minority group, contrary to what you might think, like maybe the majority group is like trying to oppress the minority group, but in fact it's kind of the opposite actually. Anytime you have these two different groups, the book gives the example of Germans and Dutch. Anytime there's like a soccer games being played, Dutch is smaller than Germany, but they're both Nordic countries. And so you would predict like maybe they would just support each other because they're both Nordic countries, but in fact, no. Germany supports Germany and Dutch supports Dutch, Netherlands. But if one of them loses and there's only the other one left, the Germans still support the Dutch because somehow the Germans think of the Dutch as kind of like them because the Germans are the majority group. But the Dutch are a smaller group, and so when the Dutch lose, the Dutch don't necessarily support the Germans. The Dutch are a smaller group, and so whatever cultural dynamics are going on, they don't want to necessarily associate with the dominant group. They want to feel like they're unique, they're special as a smaller group, and so they don't necessarily support the Germans. So that was the example used in the book, and you can apply it to other groups. So if whites are the dominant group, this group size dynamic would suggest that whites on average want to support everyone because they're the dominant group. Like, I don't know, maybe they're comfortable, maybe they have power, whatever it is. The dominant group kind of wants to support everyone. Now, I mean, obviously this is not the case 100 years ago when there was racism. 150 years ago, whatever it would be. But, so this effect, this group size dynamic, says basically like the majority group, whites, kind of want to support everyone, maybe because they're comfortable, maybe they have power, whatever the reason is. But the minority group, whether that's Asian, whether that's African American, whether that's Native American, they do not want to associate with the majority group, the whites. They want to like stay, I don't know, identifying as their own unique people. They don't want to be part of the majority group. They actually don't identify with the majority group. And so maybe that's what's going on. Maybe African Americans, like because they're the minority group, like maybe there are power dynamics, but African Americans do not want to associate as the same type of people as white people, even though white people do want to think of themselves as the same type of people as African Americans. So that's one topic that the book went into. Outgroup homogeneity. So it's the idea that people in that group are all kind of the same. So the same thing is true here, where the majority group, I mean, it's hard to think that this is true, but that's kind of what the book implies, is that the majority group are more likely to say that, like, all those people are not all the same. But the minority group does think that about the majority group. So in the case, it gave the statistic that, well, I mean, we also come to this outgroup homogeneity. We all think, I mean, I don't know an example, but I don't want to make it insensitive, but I don't know, Colombians, like as a white person or whatever you are, you almost think to yourself, Colombians. So homogeneity would mean like they're all kind of the same. They're all kind of the same. They're all kind of Catholic. They're all Spanish. They all come from a country that's corrupt, and maybe they suffer from a history of gang or drugs or some corruption. You almost think to yourself, they're all kind of the same. But actually, it's less the case that the majority group thinks that the minority group is all the same than it is that the case that the minority group thinks that the majority group is all the same. So the example is that African Americans are more likely to think that whites are all the same than it is the case that whites think that African Americans are all the same. So that's like one dynamic, outgroup homogeneity. Let's see, what was the other one? So one example was dominance and assertion, is that So maybe it's the case, for whatever reasons, that men want to feel dominant, and they want to feel that their wife is slightly less dominant, is more submissive than they are. Maybe this is like human nature, maybe this is cultural, we don't know. But whatever the reason is for this preference, it happens to be in African American culture, maybe because there's a lot of independence, a lot of perseverance in poor life situations, that African American women are very assertive. And so maybe that's one reason. Maybe like being assertive is not considered attractive. That's one explanation that the book gives. I don't want to necessarily give my like interpretation because I might be wrong, but that's like, I don't know, does that seem like it could be one mechanism? I don't know. Let's see. So one idea is the culturally dominant group is considered the most attractive. And I've thought about this for a long time. Like, what makes people attractive? Like, yes, women are looking for like height and intelligence and just popularity and like being physically fit. Actually, and this gets into like supernormal stimuli and like human nature. Like, what are women attracted to? What are men attracted to? Like, actually, this is what I wanted to make a whole video about. Is a lot of what, and this. Where did I read this? The Rational Animal by Kenrick, or wherever I read this. There's something called compensatory attraction. So yeah, like women want tall men, but if you're not tall, like you can still be funny, you can still be physically fit, you can still work really hard, make money that way or something, right? You could be really nice and generous. Compensatory attraction. So it might be the case that women's preferences are very like socially framed. So it's not necessarily the case that just being tall is attractive. I mean, yeah, actually that is true, that tall men are just considered more attractive, but it's not necessarily the case that like just being good looking is considered attractive to women. It is, but it's more the case that like there's a social interplay, like the type of man who gets other women's attraction, the type of man who's very popular and successful is the type of man who women find attractive. So it's more of like a social context, whereas for men there's not a lot of social context. Actually, men want women who are on average young. Cues of fertility, like fairer skin, clearer skin, certain types of curves, petite nose, neotenous traits. This is known like in evolutionary psychology. This is even in Genome by Matt Ridley, is like humans, when we branched off from the other species that are most like us, we specialized, and females caring for our very long, slow developing babies. And so if you're going to invest your half of your life into one female, then you want her to be very high quality, and so you want to have as much time with her as possible. So you prefer her to be younger so that you can more likely monopolize her reproductive resource. All these things that are going on. But basically, neotenous traits are considered attractive in females. So slightly larger eyes, slightly larger forehead, slightly smaller nose, physically thinner lips, but fuller lips. There's even like Supernormal Stimuli by Deirdre Barrett. She gives this talk, and she has this facial composite that they ran tests on. Like, you can take an average female face and you can just slightly exaggerate shape of the forehead, the size of the forehead, the size of the eyes, the size of the nose, the size of the lips, rounded features, less pronounced like jaw or chin or nose or jaw or anything, rounder features, neotenous features. Those are all considered more attractive in females. If you give any female like a brush up with these traits, she'll be considered more attractive. So men's preferences are less socially contextual than females. So men are just attracted to neotenous looking females who are young and beautiful and sexy, presumably. And females are more like in queue for like these social dynamics. Is he successful? Is he popular? Does he get other girls' attentions? Like these types of things. Anyway, what was I getting at? Culturally dominant group. So what do we consider attractive is the most common? oh, so like what? So I've been thinking about this, like what makes this attractive or that attractive. So yes, there are all these biological things going on. There's this social context going on, but there's also just the fact that the culturally dominant group is seen as the ideal, and so I've thought about this, like, I don't want to come off as offensive. This is like a genuine scientific question, but clearly, if men do have a preference for neotenous traits and fairer skin, then the ethnic group in women who have evolved the most neotenous traits, the most fair skin, would be considered the most attractive, which is Northern European people are the most fair skin. And at least from my interpretation of like ethnic differences in like nose size, there's a science behind nose size. If you're closer to the equator, if it's more humid, you have to have a wider nose, a flatter nose, wide and flat. And if you're in like I don't really know the full mechanism, but if you're in drier climates, especially like dry hot climates like the Middle East, you'll see that people have like very long, big, like tall noses. And I don't know, it seems to be that maybe I'm wrong, but Northern European women have more petite noses than other regions in which, like, I don't know, evolution just designed noses to be wider or longer or bigger or whatever. See, I was thinking, like, is it the case that Northern European women just, like, by chance evolved to be fairer skin and have more petite noses, and so they're just considered more attractive? I mean, I don't know what type of dynamic that would be, but there's also this culturally dominant group. I'll just show my notebook, just so I'm not like, I don't know, making this up or something. But yeah, so the culturally dominant group, anytime a group rises to power, and maybe this even goes against what I just said about like group size dynamics and like out-group homogeneity, but anytime a group rises to power, like other groups notice that, and they kind of want to also gain that power, and like so they want to learn from like the dominant group. And so if it's the case that like by chance or whatever, Northern Western European peoples gains the most technology and power and kind of like took over the world or whatever you would want to call it in terms of media or I don't know, technology or whatever it is, economics, finance, whatever it is. That if Northern and Western European kind of like rule the world, then I mean not rule the world like literally, but like they're overrepresented in like the media and like intellectual creations, technological creations, all these things. Then people will generally see like, oh, like they're pretty good at like life. Like I kind of want to be like them. And so maybe it would just be the case that like the culturally dominant group is considered the most attractive. Like if you're any particular ethnic background, you would find the dominant group as the most attractive because they're like the winners in life, kind of, in some sense. And so you want to be like them, or you want to maybe intermarry with them, so your kids are kind of like them. Yeah, so that's like one potential explanation. Let's see here. Yeah, so that was pretty much like my notes on that chapter, more or less. And yeah, it was like a super interesting book. I've already been here, 49 minutes talking about this stuff. This is, this is part of, I mean, it's almost a cliche, but like this is why I live. I like reading books and like just reading all these concepts and trying to understand the world, why the world works the way it does, or how the world works. And I mean, this is literally one chapter of one book, and yeah, I've interspersed it with other books that I've been reading and other books I have read and just other ideas that I've heard about. And this is like, honestly, this is what people should be doing, is reading lots of books and just learning all these things and trying to understand human nature, trying to understand themselves, trying to understand other people, what's going on in the world, why it might be going on, why different perspectives on how to interpret it. And so, yeah, that's what I like to do, is read books and try to understand all these concepts. And that's why I'm sharing this, because I think that other people should do the same. And yeah, if I can try to share these concepts with you, and maybe you learn from them, maybe you get a habit, your hobby of, you develop an interest of your own and this like intellectual curiosity, that would be great. But obviously I only get 5 views per video on average, so this is for me, I suppose, more than anything. But it's still a resource that's out there. Maybe someone randomly stumbles on this video and could be useful. Maybe it's not useful, I don't know. What else? Like I'm really just kind of like thinking about like what can I share from this notebook that could be useful to someone, that could kind of like almost model myself. Like, look, I'm the type of person who reads all these books and writes all these notes, all these interesting things. And, maybe you can learn from me. Maybe I can share something with you. Maybe you can appreciate me for, I don't know, doing this as like my lifestyle. I don't know. But, yeah, so what else can I just like riff on for a little bit? I mean, I don't want to go on for too long here. It's already been 51 minutes, but, So I was reading Breaking Hearts by Roy Baumeister. That was like, as I said, I've reread that book a couple times now, and it's just a very interesting book. It's about like unrequited love. Why do people fall in love with people who don't appreciate them? Like, why is this a thing? It's not funny. It is funny, but it's not funny. It's it is a thing. Let me start. Where did I start this note on Breaking Hearts? Very great book. I've already taken a video of my bookshelf. I recommend pretty much all the books on that bookshelf, but obviously any book that I went ahead and took notes on and reread must be a pretty good book, at least in my opinion. So definitely recommend Breaking Hearts and The Social Dimension of Sex and all these other ones. Where did I must have started this book a long time ago, actually. I must have read like a chapter and then put it down for like 2 months, and then read a bunch of other books, and then picked it back up again. Yeah, this is going back pretty far when I started my note for Breaking Hearts. Let's see here. Yeah, quite a long time ago. Anyway, the book starts off with like these examples of like there's the Tales of Young Werther. It's a German novel about a guy who falls in love with a girl who's already engaged, and basically he confesses his love to her, and like she kind of goes for it a little bit, but then she's like, no, I'm already married, I really can't do this. And he commits suicide, and he leaves like this long love note, and essentially the book is saying like this started the whole unrequited love, like suicide script, social cultural script. That's a lot of what we're doing in life, is we're following scripts that the media and our stories that we tell each other has provided for us. We're following scripts, and that script was kind of created by the Tales of Young Werther. I'm trying to find this note. I really should make like an index or so. Oh, here, no, that's the second note, but the second day that I wrote about that book. But well, this is a bit embarrassing, I guess. Yeah, maybe I need to make an index or something, but I never really imagined that I would have to look up my notes. I just went through one after another and just kept going. But yeah, so the Tales of Young Werther. I'm trying to find the author's name at the very least. And then it goes into an example of what was the family? There's the Russian Tsarina and Tsar, where he was in love. He was a Russian prince. He fell in love with like the German princess or something, and she was not in him at all. Russia was backwater. Russia was a bit ugly and dirty, and she didn't want to be associated with Russia. She was a princess. She can be very picky, but he just kept trying and kept trying to prove his devotion or whatever, and eventually here it is. Wow, that was a long time ago. October 1st. And then I picked it back up much later. Picked it back up January 7th. That's a pretty big distance. But yeah, so let me see here. Oh, so it's Goethe. Sorrows of Young Werther was Goethe, by Goethe. Yeah. And then it goes into about, let's see, we have self-serving biases about what we remember, what parts of our stories that we tell. There's gendered norms. People are helpless if they're not able to act, or culture doesn't give them the right to act. They're just like receptive. And then there's low self-esteem and stigma to the person who has to do making the actions about these things. And then Nicholas, Prince of Russia and Alexandria. Yeah, so she was a German princess, he was a Russian prince, and she was like, I don't want you, you're backwaters, you're like from a different, you're much below me. And then the book says, actually through persistence and blah blah blah, and you just like, this is the script, this is the cultural script that we give in our media, is the pursuer has to just be persistent. And anyway, eventually he did win her heart, and then there was the Russian Revolution, and they killed all of them, so that was a bit of a bad ending. Let's see, attractiveness. So we all have this like self-serving bias. We all think we're more attractive than we actually are, and this creates a particularly specific issue in unrequited love, where This is funny, but it's not funny, but it is true. I mean, literally everyone who's ever had a relationship problem probably suffers from this. This is like, I'm just going to say, like, this is like the number one relationship problem causer, is that we all think we're more attractive than we are. So if I'm a 5, I think I'm a 7. And so I go after these women who are 7s. I'm actually a 5. But I'm going after all these women who are 7 who are like, look, you're a 5. Not only that, but the women have a self-serving bias. So they're a 7, they think they're a 9. So these women who are a 9 are like, look, you're a 5. And I'm like, no, I'm a 7. We're both 7s. And that explains like half of all like relationship dynamics, is you're a 5. You're going after 7s. And the 7s think they're a 9 and you're a 5. And you're a 7. You're a 7, and all these guys who are like 3s are going after you, and you don't want them, and you're going after these 9s, and they don't want you, and that's like half of like all relationship dynamics. So that's kind of funny. It's not funny, but it is kind of funny. Yeah, it's called Falling Upward. There's something about courtly love, medieval knights who fell in love with a princess or a minor noble, and they respected chastity and all this stuff, and they just took it as like honorable despair, that they would just have their heart broken over and over again as a symbol of virtue. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of cool. I wish we had a culture like that still. I don't know, but that just seems romantic to me too. I don't know, but I'm kind of weird. I think it's romantic to like self-sacrifice overly for love, or like to just like pursue through abuse, and like, I don't know, pursue through all these like things for love. And I'm a bit unusual maybe, but I think that's very romantic to that you would like respect chastity, that you would respect, you'd honorably recognize that like your love will never be fulfilled. Like this is like the courtly era of medieval love or whatever. After that, I actually listened to a podcast, a very interesting podcast. Let me find it. Maybe it was after that. Maybe it was before that. It was a Norwegian author. Can't find it right now. Oh, here, no. Maybe it was just before that. Oh, here it is. It was just before that, actually. September 26th. Mads Larsen on the Dissenter, talking about just like this dynamic of like how like the scripts of love have changed in European culture specifically. I mean, he's from Northern Europe, he's from Scandinavia, so he's kind of interpreting it from the Scandinavian lens, but also the wider like Western cultural world has went through these phases, kind of. And he talks about how like there's this really sick part of human history that doubles back on like Razib Khan and like all these like concepts about like ethnic groups kind of like taking over each other and killing each other and taking all the women like this. And this is like game theory. Like sometimes I think like wouldn't it be better if we were all peaceful? That's what women think. That's what a lot of men think. Wouldn't it be better if we were all peaceful? We never took over each other or tried to steal women, whatever we humans did in history. And I think, no, like actually game theory would predict that you'd actually just lose. You'd lose. If we were all peaceful, we'd lose to a group of people who were not peaceful. That's how it works. That's game theory. So no, like it's kind of like an essential part of human nature to be potentially violent and conquering other people, because if you weren't, then you would succumb to groups who were. Anyway, so yeah, he talks about like this era, like 5,000 years ago, where people would just wipe out like neighboring groups in Scandinavia and Northern Europe and probably all over the world, but it was just assumed kind of that like women had to just latch on to the victors of the warfare, because what else would they do? Die? Very sick. But then it goes into like the courtly love era. A lot of monogamy and courting and stuff, and then yeah, very cool topic. The Mads Larsen's work on analyzing Nordic romantic media, cultural trajectory or whatever. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so that's... what else is like a cool note that maybe could be useful to someone? I mean, who's going to watch this for an hour? But, maybe it's good for my self-esteem to do it anyway. Let's see, blah, blah, blah. Intellectual and the intelligence paradox. That was a pretty good one. Satoshi Kanazawa. This is I was also listening to podcasts. I took a little note on like Anna Matchin and Coleman Hughes. I ordered the book. I don't know if it'll be here, but yeah, Anna Matchin. That's kind of a cool idea about. Cool concepts to learn about. So the intelligence paradox by Satoshi Kanazawa. So basically IQ is like kind of like this specific adaptation to solve novel problems, unique new problems in life, and like actually having high IQ doesn't mean you're better at normal problems in life, like mating, getting friends, acquiring sufficient nutrition or resources or whatever. So he goes into this detail about how like maybe there actually is dysgenics going on. Is that high IQ people actually don't on average have more kids? Maybe they have less kids on average. Because they're not actually like better at normal things. They're just better at high IQ things. Reading, getting college degrees, whatever. So that's pretty interesting. And high IQ women have children later on in life, like in their 40s, where there's significantly higher rates of like autism, Down syndrome, genetic disorders, prenatal poor like environments, androgen, whatever it is that goes on. high IQ women, they wait until their 40s when their career and education is over before they have children, and by then, like, there's a relatively higher chance that, like, if they do have kids, like, it'll have problems. So, you know, so this is a problem. Like, if you're a high IQ woman, either you have kids when you're young and you don't express your high IQ, like, in life, or you do express your high IQ in life, but then you have kids later on in life where you're gonna have less kids and they're gonna have problems more likely. So that's a problem. And as like socially incorrect as it is, like I remember reading, and I mean like cultures do this. A lot of indigenous cultures do this. I'm gonna put my notebook down. This is gonna be it for now, but like a lot of indigenous cultures, like there's a gradient. Is that what you call it? There's an age gap. Like men have kids when they're like in their 30s and they're like successful. They've proven themselves successful, and supposedly the ones who have not proven themselves successful, maybe they've died. But yeah, like in a lot of indigenous cultures, men get married and have kids like in their 30s, but women like get married and have kids like shortly after menarche or something, like shortly after being able to have kids. Like that's their, reproductively most fertile phase of their life or something. I don't know the terminology you'd want to use, you'd want to hear, but yeah, so a lot of indigenous cultures do this, where men don't have kids until they like proven themselves successful in life, but women do have kids like as soon as they can, more or less. And I think like the Germans, like during the Nazi era, as much as people think that like the Germans have no merit at all during this era, but like in fact, like you can just analyze one by one, like their policies, their beliefs, and think like, was there merit to it? Was it completely wrong? Was there something right about it? Like they believed a lot in women's rights in terms of like fertility. So they kind of basically said like yeah, men should go become scientists and doctors and prove themselves useful in life, but women, like maybe it's nature, maybe it's just being as most like efficient, using your resources, your life resources as possible. Maybe women just like should focus more on being mothers. I mean, there's a trade-off. Like you can get a career, get an education, but then you're not going to have. There's a trade-off. You're going to have kids later in life, where there's going to be more problems. You're going to have less kids. You're going to be older. In some ways, I think it's unethical. Honestly, I've told people this. Like in some ways, it's unethical to have kids in your 40s because your kid is going to be a teen and you're like in your 60s almost. That's kind of unethical. Like you don't have energy to keep up with your kids at that point. But if there's like a age gap difference, like I was gonna say, like the Germans, as much as you don't want to think the Germans had any merit to their beliefs at all during this time, but like that was kind of like one idea, is like women, your most productive, fertile healthy part of your life to have kids is like 20, and like for men, like no, you need to like be useful to society. You need to wait until you have a career in education. You're like in your 30s or something. So that was like a thing, like in the Nazi era, is women, not that they were like discouraged from getting an education, but they were encouraged to have a lot of kids and to have them young. And so, yeah, like this is maybe a part of human nature, is like there's a trade-off from the woman's perspective, is you can't have it all. From the man's perspective, it's more of a gamble. Like your life is not proven useful until it is. Like, so there's completely different situations, constraints, problems that we face in life, males and females. And I was going to say, like, if you read Roy Baumeister's Is There Anything Good About Men? Like, that's the whole concept, is like, men and women have different constraints, different trade-offs that we make in life from each other. And yeah, men overrepresent women in high IQ and like career success, but they also overrepresent women at the very bottom parts of life, being in prison, dying at a young age, all these things. So yeah. I mean, my whole point for making this video was really just to summarize like some of what I've read lately, just to say like, look, this is my notebook. I'm almost done with it. It's taken a few months, but we go up and down with our productivity. And that's about it, isn't it? I do want to say, maybe this is offensive to people. I mean, it's not really offensive considering half of the things that I've said already in this video that maybe people would find insensitive, but in fact, like, no, these are real topics, real ideas that you should think about and debate and, come to conclusions about and really intellectually work with. But this is like the most offensive thing I could say, is that actually, like, the majority of books are not good books. Like, if you go to Target or, I don't know, Amazon Prime, like, the vast majority of those books are not good books. They're not from scientists, they're not from reputable, respected people. They're pop books. And so I just want to say that, like, look, a lot of the books that you might see are pop books. They're not actually, I don't know, good books. They're just not. They're pop books. They're taking advantage of trying to sell you on some life-changing thing, some life-changing idea. And, like, real scientists, like a lot of the authors that I read, would not recommend a lot of those books, those pop books. That's, like, my number one way to, like, see if a book is worth my time, is, like, who recommended it? Is it a scientist, an author who I already respect? Or is it just a bunch of journalists and, like, other pop authors? And that's one of the ways that I determine if a book is worth my time or not. So I've just been doing this notebook. I'm almost done with it. I just listen to podcasts. If I hear an interesting idea, I write it down. And if I have an interesting idea, I've just started this. If I have an interesting idea, I'll write it down, but I'll do it with the in parentheses to show that this is not from anything. This is my idea. Where did I have an idea like that? I mean, I've already been going on forever, but oh yeah. Well, this is just me reading random books and taking notes, and I have this little, like, in parentheses, this, actually, here's this idea that I just thought about. But yeah, like, so that's about it. So my advice to people is read a lot of books, take notes, but it's a slow life. The rewards to being intellectually curious won't come for a very long time, if they come at all. And so it's a very specific cultural thing, and it's not for everyone, but I certainly think that it's a more virtuous way of life than whatever people generally do. So I'll leave it at that. All right.